Gilderoy Lockhart. We are introduced to Gilderoy Lockhart in Chamber of Secrets. He shows up with a glossy smile, perfectly curled hair, and a stack of bestsellers that all suspiciously sound the same. In the movie, he's this charming fraud who's somehow convinced the entire wizarding world that he's a legendary hero. And for a while, Harry actually buys into it. His big moment in the film happens in the chamber itself, where he tries to erase Harry and Ron's memories so he can run away from the mess he helped create. But the broken wand turns the spell back on him, wiping his own mind instead. So where is he now? Honestly, probably still wandering around St. Mungo's, signing autographs for healers who never asked for them. The films never bother to bring him back, and since they skip his later book appearances, Lockhart becomes this weird piece of the wizarding world's history. Igor Karkaroff. Karkaroff only gets one real moment in Goblet of Fire, but he leaves a strong impression. Tall, dramatic, and wrapped in fur, he enters Hogwarts leading the Durmstrang boys, glaring at everyone, and making sure nobody forgets he used to sit at the Death Eater's table. In the movie, he spends most of his time whispering frantically to Snape and stressing about Voldemort's return. And really, you can see the panic bubbling under the surface the whole time. The man knows he betrayed his old crowd, and the second Voldemort comes back, his life expectancy drops to 0. But the films never show you what happens after the third task. Karkaroff basically vanishes into the fog. And based on the movie's logic, he probably ran as far and as fast as humanly possible to some frozen cottage in the north, where he sleeps with one eye open and both hands on a wand. The movies don't confirm anything, but they frame him like the kind of guy who wouldn't last long once Voldemort starts tying up loose ends. So realistically, he's either hiding under a new identity, or he didn't make it very far after fleeing Hogwarts that night. Stan Shunpike. Stan Shunpike is one of those characters who appears once, steals his scene, and then the franchise just casually forgets about him. He shows up in Prisoner of Azkaban as the fast-talking conductor of the night bus. His persona in the film is chaotic, friendly, and slightly unhinged. He's the perfect match for the night bus itself, which is loud, unpredictable, and probably just a few accidents away from losing his job. But outside that one magical night ride, Stan never returns to the movies, not even as a background character. So where would Stan be now? Well, he probably stayed on the night bus crew arguing with Ernie the driver about speed limits that clearly don't exist. He feels like the type who'd live his whole life bouncing between London alleyways annoying passengers. The movies give him no future, but he seems like a survivor in all the wrong ways. Arabella Figg. Mrs. Figg is one of those blink and you miss her characters, who actually plays a surprisingly important role. She shows up in Order of the Phoenix right after the Dementors attack Harry and Dudley in Little Whinging, limping through the alley like she's been waiting for this exact disaster to happen. In the movie, she's the one who yanks Harry out of shock and says, "Don't put your wand away."
Don't put away your wand, Harry.
Instantly revealing she knows way more than she ever let on. She testifies at Harry's ministry hearing too, which technically makes her responsible for keeping him at Hogwarts. And yet, after that, she disappears with no follow-up. She does her job and the story just moves on without her. If we look at the movies alone, Mrs. Figg probably went straight back to her cats and her quiet suburban life. She seems like the type who stays connected to the Order off-screen, passing little bits of intel from Privet Drive. Miles Bletchley. We only get to see Miles Bletchley briefly in Chamber of Secrets as the Slytherin keeper who faces the newly upgraded Nimbus 2001 equipped chasers. His biggest moment is simply trying to stop a Quidditch team with far better brooms and getting flattened by the firebolt-level precision of Gryffindor's lineup. After that, he fades out of the matches we actually see on screen. He's still on the Slytherin roster later in the books, but as far as actual appearances go, this is the only time the films really acknowledge him. Where is he now? Most likely working in some professional Quidditch-adjacent job. Slytherins with athletic backgrounds tend to end up managing teams, inspecting brooms, or jumping into ministry sports regulation. Miles never gets an epilogue moment, so he becomes one of those players who probably peaked during school and settled into a regular wizarding life afterward. Madame Hooch. Madame Rolanda Hooch appears in Philosopher's Stone as the Hogwarts flying instructor and the referee for the first-year Quidditch matches. She oversees Harry's very first broomstick lesson, and she's the one who recognizes immediately that he has an unusual natural ability. In the Quidditch segments, she officiates the matches with a strict professional demeanor, giving the impression of someone who takes her job seriously. But after that first film, Hooch is absent from all the others. The movies never mention whether she continued teaching at Hogwarts or if she had any involvement during the darker years when Voldemort rose to power. She's simply not brought back into the story. Logically, since Hogwarts continued operating throughout most of the series, she would still be working as part of the staff. There's nothing on screen that suggests she left, and no storyline replaces her. The films just shift focus to other teachers and other types of magic. So while she disappears from the audience's view, she likely remained in the background of the castle, teaching new students to fly and refereeing games long after Harry's year moved on. Professor Vector. Professor Vector teaches arithmancy, one of the most complex subjects at Hogwarts, but we only ever see her once in passing. She appears in Prisoner of Azkaban and is mentioned a few times afterward, but never gets a real scene, a quote, or a defining moment. In the films, she's little more than a nameplate on the class roster. The odd thing is that arithmancy itself is treated as a high-level, almost research-driven field. That means Vector is one of the school's most academically respected minds, yet she never receives the spotlight that professors like McGonagall or Flitwick do. Where is she now? Still teaching? Absolutely. Teachers who specialize in subjects like arithmancy tend to stay at Hogwarts for decades. She likely continued her research quietly, shaping generations of students who later moved into magical theory work, curse-breaking or ministry calculation departments. Vector is the definition of a character whose impact happens entirely off-screen. Frank Bryce. In The Goblet of Fire, we're introduced to a character named Frank Bryce, who essentially sets the mood for the entire movie. He's the quiet muggle caretaker of the old Riddle estate, the man who lived long enough to know that something dark lingered in that house long before Voldemort returned. His introduction is simple, a man going about his routine, stepping into a story far bigger than he ever realized. When he overhears Voldemort and Wormtail plotting upstairs, he walks into the wrong moment at the wrong time, and Voldemort kills him without hesitation. Frank becomes the first life taken in the lead-up to Voldemort's full return. He's a symbolic spark that signals how high the stakes have become. While it looks like he might have played a bigger role in the movies, Frank didn't get more screen time, which is a bit sad, as it looked like he would have been a lot helpful later on. Rufus Scrimgeour. Rufus Scrimgeour appears in Deathly Hallows Part 1, stepping into the series as Minister for Magic at a time when things are already falling apart. He's worn down, serious, and clearly aware of how fragile the wizarding world has become. His conversation with Harry sets the tone for who he is, a government official trying to maintain order while the walls are closing in. In his one major scene, he's firm but not unkind. He understands what Harry represents, but he also knows how desperate the situation is. And then the film quietly moves past him. We hear about his fate through dialogue, not visuals. He's killed when the Ministry falls. It's brief, almost abrupt, but it matches the way the films portray him, someone fighting a losing battle with limited time. Mundungus Fletcher. Mundungus Fletcher has a short but memorable role in Deathly Hallows Part 1. In the movie, he's introduced as part of the Order of the Phoenix, but even from his first moment, it's clear he's not built for high-pressure missions. He's nervous, unreliable, and constantly looking for the easiest way out. During the Seven Potters escape plan, he panics, abandons his post, and disapparates, leaving Mad Eye exposed. For a while, it seems like that cowardly decision is the last time the story will acknowledge him, but he resurfaces later in one of the film's most important turns. Dobby and Creature hunt him down and drag him back to Grimmauld Place after Harry demands answers about the missing Slytherin locket. It's there, cornered and terrified, that Mundungus finally admits he stole the locket and ended up losing it to Dolores Umbridge. Even though his role is small, that confession becomes a major piece of the larger plot. After that scene, the movies don't show him again. There's no moment of redemption or further involvement in the fight against Voldemort. He likely went back into the same life he had before, keeping his head down, avoiding danger, and staying far away from anything involving the Order or the Ministry. Madame Marsh. Madame Marsh appears briefly in Prisoner of Azkaban as the seasick passenger who stumbles off the night bus during one of its chaotic stops. Her entire role lasts only a few seconds, but it paints a clear picture of how unpredictable magical transportation can be. Fast, useful, and borderline reckless. She represents the everyday witch caught in the quirks of wizarding life. While major threats swirl around Harry, characters like Madame Marsh remind us that the world keeps moving, and not everyone is dealing with prophecies or dark lords. Some are just trying to get to their destination without losing their lunch. Where is she now? Likely avoiding the night bus entirely and relying on more stable transport like flu powder, broom taxis, maybe even a quiet walk. Alicia Spinett's replacement. While Angelina, Katie, and Alicia are all part of the core Gryffindor Quidditch trio in the books, the film streamlined the team so heavily that we only see one additional chaser for a single match, the unnamed Gryffindor chaser who appears during Chamber of Secrets. She fills the space that, in book canon, belongs to one of the girls, but the movie never names her, never gives her a line, and never brings her back. She flies one match and then vanishes from the lineup the moment the franchise returns to its main cast. So what happened to her? Well, she most likely folded into the background student body as one of the many athletes who never made the final roster once the films narrowed their focus. Hogwarts has dozens of unnamed students whose lives continue off-screen, and she becomes one of them. She's a quietly skilled chaser who simply had her moment and moved on. Mafalda Hopkirk. Mafalda Hopkirk appears once in the films, not as herself, but as the official whose identity Hermione uses in Deathly Hallows Part 1. Mafalda's voice is already familiar from the howler Harry receives in Order of the Phoenix, but her physical introduction comes when the trio infiltrates the Ministry to retrieve the locket. She's startled, composed, and instantly overwhelmed by the chaos around her. Although she's only on screen for a short time, her inclusion shows how far the Ministry has fallen. Even civil servants like Hopkirk aren't safe once Voldemort's influence takes over, and Hermione using her identity draws her directly into the conflict. Where is she now? Her fate isn't specified, but most Ministry workers returned once Kingsley reorganised the government. Mafalda likely resumed her administrative role, the kind of quiet, steady job that keeps the magical bureaucratic world functioning behind the scenes. She remains one of those characters whose life intersects briefly with history before returning to routine. Myron Wagtail. The Yule Ball in Goblet of Fire introduces one of the most unforgettable bands in the Wizarding world, the Weird Sisters, and at the centre of that single performance stands Myron Wagtail, their lead singer. His appearance is brief, but he becomes part of one of the most important nights in Hogwarts history, the Triwizard Ball, where alliances formed, friendships shifted, and tensions quietly surfaced before the darkness of the second task arrived. Myron's voice, his stage presence, the way the Great Hall transforms around him, is the only moment in the series that feels like a proper celebration before everything changes. So where is he now? Most likely back on tour. The Weird Sisters were established long before the Triwizard Tournament, and their fame only grew afterward. The films don't revisit them, but Myron becomes one of those figures who existed just outside the story's spotlight. Tom the Innkeeper. Tom appears briefly in Prisoner of Azkaban, though the character differs sharply from his book counterpart. In the film, he becomes a hunched, chatty, soft-spoken manager running the leaky cauldron with the energy of someone juggling far too many requests at once. He's the one who checks Harry into his room, guides him through the strange comforts of wizard lodging, and maintains the pub's strange charm during Harry's short stay there. And then he disappears from the films entirely, replaced in later stories by background imagery and unspoken transitions. So where is he now? Well, the leaky cauldron has always had long-term management, so it's likely Tom simply fades back into the quiet routine of running a place that sits between two worlds, shielding muggles from magic on one side and offering refuge to witches and wizards on the other. A one-scene caretaker who keeps the crossroads steady. Ernie Prang. Ernie Prang makes his only real appearance as the night bus driver in Prisoner of Azkaban. Stan does the talking, but Ernie is the one steering, or more accurately, wrestling the violently unpredictable night bus through London streets as if it has a mind entirely of its own. His calmness behind the wheel gives the night bus sequence its structure. Chaos everywhere, steady hands guiding it through. It's a small role, but an essential one. Ernie shows that even in the wizarding world, someone has to keep the machinery moving, even when that machinery nearly crashes through half the city. Where is he now? Almost certainly still with the night bus team. Drivers with enough experience to control that vehicle don't come around often, and the Ministry relies heavily on those who can manage the magical strain. Ernie is one of those hidden backbone characters, seen once, crucial in that moment, and then absorbed back into the world's everyday rhythm.